So earlier today, Royale High made a post calling out quote unquote misinformation, and I'm gonna be honest, I think this post might be about us. Oh, and I'm not saying that in a narcissistic way, but just because my video yesterday about the nerfing got a ton of views, I think more compared to many other channels or many other people talking about the situation. So I think it's fair to assume that obviously my video may have contributed to this sentiment. So I want to go ahead and read you guys the comments I left under this post, as well as a conversation I had with Royale High's community manager through the Twitter account, and just go over whether or not farming has actually been nerfed, because I have some thoughts in it, obviously some personal opinions, which doesn't mean they're factual, but they are my opinions, and we're gonna go over everything. Now with that in mind, I do have an official Twitter account now because it seems like there's some people impersonating me, and I also want to be able to ask them questions. So I do have a Twitter account. However, I hate to be the bearer of bad news for people who dislike me, but I don't check the notifications on there. So if you want to tell me to kill myself, I would recommend doing that through my sponsorship email so I can actually see it. But yeah, I won't be really checking my notifications on Twitter. So just a fair disclosure there. But regardless, let's get straight into it. So Royale High made this post earlier today, and it reads, "Attention students, we did not nerf Quest XP. You're earning the same amount as before this visual change. The only change, diamonds now drop all at once when you level up instead of trickling in during quests. This was a highly requested revert," which it certainly was. I know there's a lot of people requesting this, and I think a point from my original video still stands, and that's why I didn't take the video down, is because to a degree, I think obviously this update has pleased a lot of people, but at the same time, I feel like it just wasn't very clearly communicated to the broader community. They just said it was a visual change. But for players, when there is a bug with, it seems, the display, which I'll show you guys later in the video, it does kind of make players think that they're knocking the same amount of XP, which I'm gonna get into whether or not stars are XP or how it's going on, because I'm very confused. But we'll get into that in a little bit here, so please hold on. I have some valid points to make, I think. And they go on to say, also, diamonds per hour isn't a perfect metric. You don't level up on the dot every hour anyway. We can't stop the misinformation, but we can give our students the correct info. What you do with that is up to you. Looking at you, YouTubers. I'm gonna be honest, I think people are pretty quick to clock this is probably about my channel, and also there's some other channels too that made commentary content about this as well. So I think this was kind of like obviously directed at a wide variety of creators, but because my video seems to have gotten the most amount of views out of any kind of nerfed video that was posted yesterday, I would assume it's primarily targeted at me, which that's fine. One thing I'm not going to do is when I, start yapping on the internet and someone corrects me or makes a correction, I'm always happy to admit when I'm wrong, obviously, and I'm not going to hide behind a screen and be like, oh, I didn't do anything. I'm open to having conversations and asking questions, so that's what I went ahead and did, and I went ahead and made a Twitter account just to ask this question. So, I wrote this to them. Is there plans to communicate these changes more transparently prior to implementation? Based on the amount of time spent versus diamond earnings, it seems revenue from art class is noticeably less than before the update due to the fluctuating EXP earnings, or XP earnings, sorry. And something I think is important to note here too is that they say diamonds per hour isn't a perfect metric, which that's right, but I think that the way that some players identify how much their time is worth or how much stuff in a game is worth is based on how much of their time it takes, because it's my personal belief that everybody's time is worth money, and I definitely think that if quests are taking longer, or maybe you're getting not a ton of XP for certain quests, you should definitely prioritize other quests. So my intention with the video was to illustrate that if you're doing things that previously would give you diamonds, like putting on deodorant, washing your hands in the morning routine, doing stuff like that, and now you're just getting tiny chunks of XP, in my opinion, that is not as efficient. So in my opinion, it seems like a subtle nerf. That was my opinion. I understand that they obviously want to clarify that they didn't actually technically nerf anything, but I do believe that it made it slightly less effective to be doing the morning routine, and so there's other ways that you can make more money by optimizing the amount of XP you're earning per minute or per hour, whatever you want to call it, right? And I definitely do think that time is worth money, and so when it comes to obviously farming in the most, I guess, best way, if that's what you want to call it, where you're getting the most amount of XP, therefore the most amount of levels, where you can then get level diamond bonuses, I think there are specific ways to go about doing that, and unfortunately old farming methods don't really account for that. So that's basically what I was trying to say, right? And so I made this comment, and there's somebody who actually made a really good point. Tay writes, "Are you sure there's a difference? What noticeably less are you referring to? The art class hasn't changed at all. You get XP based on how many players are the server and how many guess correct. The XP is the same," which that is correct. When you play the art class, which a lot of people used for farming previously, which I'm gonna be honest, I don't think it's as good for farming anymore. But it's basically when you guess something that somebody's drawing, and then based on how quickly you guess it and how quickly other people guess it, you get a certain amount of XP. Now guys, I swear people are trying to make me sound like I'm crazy. I swear, you get diamonds when you guess the prompt correctly, and I would get diamonds, and the diamonds would range obviously, so it's hard to make an argument when the amount of diamonds you got every turn is different, and it would fluctuate quite a bit. Sometimes it'd be like 270, sometimes it'd be like closer to 400 based on how quickly people were guessing things. And so what I responded with was, I said, yes, XP fluctuates based on how fast people answer. Prior to the change, my multipliers would give me a couple hundred diamonds per turn, which with the set level being 325 XP and XP fluctuating, it impacts the speed at which you earn level diamonds, which is what I just finished saying. When you level up and it takes longer because you're doing quests that have smaller XP amounts compared to other methods, you are then therefore taking longer to level up and get the exact same amount of diamonds that you could have gotten if you just went ahead and did quests that gave you more XP bonuses, right? You know what I mean? And then I go on by saying, meaning if each round provides about 20 to 40-ish XP, which keep in mind, these are loose numbers. I'm not a game developer. I don't know the exact numbers or the range. 20 to 40 XP, you have to play around 10 to 11 rounds at 30 XP average to earn about 1,800 diamonds, because once you get 325 XP, you level up and you get the bonus, which for me, I have both multipliers, so I get 1,800 diamonds. When before, I could earn about 300 to 400 diamonds per prompt, which this was typically, I guess, because maybe I was just in servers with people that couldn't spell properly or something. I don't know. There was times where I get a lot of diamonds and times where I wouldn't get as many, so I'm trying to be obviously pretty flexible here. But when I could get about 300 to 400-ish diamonds, we'll say sometimes maybe 200. We'll give it a big range here. That's about 4.5 to 6 rounds, which we'll be generous and say 8 rounds. Still, that's less rounds than what you have to play now to get the same amount based on the XP averages, right? And so obviously I don't understand all the logistics of game development, so I'm not stating this as fact, but based on the math that I'm doing, that's why I was under the impression that the farming was nerfed, because if you do the math based on how I understand it, which again, this is my opinion, it seems like you're earning less because of the way that XP stacks up and stuff like that, which again, this is just the math that I did. I'm not a mathematician, but that's just what I think. And then they asked for me to explain. I just explained it. That's how I explain it. I don't quite know. Now, with that in mind, Royale High did respond to my comment, and they wrote, there weren't any nerfs or revenue changes made to our class in the update. Diamond earnings still scale the same way, and XP fluctuations are part of the existing system in our class, not a newly implemented change. We're always open to clear communication when actual changes occur, but in this case, nothing was adjusted, which I don't know. I'm so confused with this. And I'm going to show you guys a recording in a second here about like XP and like earnings, because I'm kind of confused. Are stars XP? Because there's some discrepancies between what shows up in your journal and what it shows that you earned versus what you actually earned. And that's what I'm confused about, because I'm trying to like understand this, but it's like if I played and I could get a couple hundred diamonds per turn based on how well everybody else did, right? Because I was getting diamonds for this. Then, after every prompt, I would get a certain amount of diamonds, which would then add up to 1,800 diamonds after a certain amount of time. And based on the math that I've done, based on the current XP rates, or how much you typically get, which is a range, obviously, so it's not going to be consistent every time, but I just kind of averaged it, then it would take longer, technically, depending, I guess, on how quick the rounds are, but it would take technically longer or more rounds to get the same amount of diamonds based on the math that I did. So I'm, again, a little bit confused on how this works. I think this may be potentially maybe a visual bug because they're still fixing or figuring out the farming. I'm not quite sure. And so obviously I'm not trying to make claims that I can't substantiate, but based on the math that I've done, in my understanding at least, this is what makes sense to me, but I don't know. They're obviously still trying to figure stuff out, so I'm not trying to obviously cause issues or spread misinformation, but that is just why I came to the conclusion that I came to. Because I did that math and I was like, hey, it's taking me quite a bit longer to earn diamonds, which I understand some people like at the end of the level. Personally, I like earning diamonds as I go. I think it's more rewarding, but that's just me. They said we're always open to clear communication when actual changes occur, but in this case, nothing was adjusted. So, clocked me. Nothing was adjusted, which I can understand. Obviously, I'm here to admit when I'm wrong. They're saying nothing was adjusted. Personally, my belief is that, I don't know, things just look different. Maybe I'm just, I don't know, crazy. You guys can let me know down below. I said thanks for taking the time to respond to my question. To clarify, I mean communication about the return of leveling rewards versus incremental diamond earning. Announcements would be super helpful for creating videos, especially to provide clarity for creators and players. Because again, I mentioned this in my video yesterday, I don't know, it just seemed like I had no idea this was gonna be happening. And then boom, all of a sudden I joined, I'm like, oh, it's different, which I try to be pretty up to date and stuff, but of course I can miss things like any human, so you don't know. And they go on to say, you're welcome, we'd appreciate if you could clarify this for your audience, as no changes were made to the system discussed and XP was not nerfed. The confusion only arose after widespread speculation suggested otherwise. Ooh. My bad. Obviously my intention is not to spread misinformation. I'll take accountability when I accidentally do so. Obviously my intention isn't to like be like, guys, it's nerfed, it's nerfed, it's nerfed. But based on the information I had and the information that was available to me at the time, based on what they had communicated, and based on the math that I've done, it seems like, in my opinion, it seems a little bit different. The farming is a little bit different. They can say it's just a visual change, and if that's the truth, okay, then that's the truth. But just based on the math that I did, I'm still a little bit confused, and maybe it's just, again, a visual bug because they're figuring things out. I don't know. So this isn't a hill I'm gonna die on, though. And they go on to say, we understand creators value advance notice for gameplay changes, and we'll always share those when they occur, and when we're able to. We're always aiming to improve, but in this case, no changes made. They just keep saying... And I understand. Obviously, they have to be professional. I can tell they're getting agitated with me. No changes made. No changes made. I'm like, okay. I understand. Okay, I get it. And I said, my goal is to share opinions on changes clearly, respectfully. I'm always happy to include official tweets / update notifications to help clarify news in my commentary content. Clear communication about any updates will help with this mission, which, again, part of the thing too as a commentary creator is I get a lot of my video suggestions from you guys. And that's not saying I'm not accountable for what I post to my channel. Obviously, it's my job to fact check things, but when I fact check stuff and I looked at what I could find, at least information that was publicly available, it was really leaning to the side that, hey, this isn't quite making sense. It's kind of confusing, which I'm going to get into some discrepancies in 1 second, okay? But, you know, it was just kind of confusing, and I feel like additional communication or clarity could have really helped, because my intention isn't to lie. Obviously, I'm not here trying to sit here and be a liar and be a loser, right? That's not my intention. I try to report with integrity and be like an honest person. But at the end of the day, I can only do what I can do with the information that I have, and I appreciate them obviously taking the time to respond to my comments on Twitter and to clarify some of this for me. And they go ahead and they post this other comment, which also, side note, that's what I was getting to. And when you guys share information with me, it's not like this is just me misinterpreting this. It seems like this was a widely misunderstood, I guess, update, because so many of you guys were sending me tickets on Discord being like, oh my gosh, this has been nerfed. The farming's not the same. I'm earning less in the art class. Then I look into it. I'm like, oh yeah, it seems like I'm kind of earning less. Like, based on not necessarily, I wouldn't say altogether, but timeline-wise, I feel like my time is worth money, and the amount of time it was taking me seemed to be slightly longer than it was before to get the same amount of diamonds. I don't know though, and I have to keep saying I don't know, because at the end of the day, I'm not in the back end of Royale High. I can't tell you for sure. I'm simply going off what you guys are sharing with me, and I feel like if there's enough people to the point where there's Reddit threads about this and people messaging me about it, I feel like it's a pretty widely misunderstood concept. And so I think a post like this was super helpful, obviously, because it adds clarity. I don't really feel like the shade was needed, but you know, at the end of the day, they can do what they want to do. They say, we appreciate that and are always happy to help clarify when needed. In this case, no changes were made beyond a visual update, which again, no changes. Okay, they say no changes. Okay. As noted in the update log, which is why there wasn't any additional announcement to share. I don't know. I still feel like where you're changing the way that things are displayed, I still feel like announcement would have been good, but again, I'm not going to die on this hill. It's okay. When adjustments do occur, we'll continue to communicate them clearly for both players and creators. So that's just kind of how we left it, which obviously I think it's important to be able to have conversations like this, because I think just posting stuff on the internet and not being open to criticism is obviously something that's pretty negative. I'm not necessarily admitting that I did anything malicious, because that's not my intention. Obviously, my intention is not to miscommunicate, but based on the information I was provided and based on the stuff that you guys are telling me, it seems like this is a pretty widely misunderstood update. And so obviously I take accountability for maybe contributing to some misunderstandings, but at the end of the day, my intention was not to do that. And still, I am a little bit confused on how stuff works, and I guess I just maybe have to wait for it to shake out and figure it out. However, I did actually come to a conclusion on why I believe this stuff is getting confused, and I hope that maybe Royale High can look into this, which I do want to clarify. I was under the impression that when you get stars for things, stars are quite literally 1 XP, because you have to get 325 to level up, which, guys, please correct me. I looked on the wiki, but all the wiki pages say they're updated, and so I don't know. I'm very confused. There's like a banner at the top that says they're updated and the information is inaccurate. I'm like, okay, well, I can't use this, and I can't really find any information other than people who have commented on like posts and stuff, so I'm trying my best to be accurate here, but I went ahead and took a video, which I'm going to show you guys, where I had a quest, and the quest was for 25 XP, and I started with 35 out of 325 XP, and I did the quest, which is running around. You can see me running around like a goof here, and then I finished my thing, and it shows me, the UI shows me I only got 23 stars. However, when I checked the amount that I got in my actual XP, it shows that I have the full amount, because I had 35 to start, and then I finished with 60, so 35 plus 25 is 60. So I feel like maybe this is something that's contributing to the misunderstanding and why players are so confused and why I was getting so many messages about it and people asking me to talk about it. Again, are stars not the same as 1 XP? I'm a little bit confused. I feel like based on like all the research I've done and just kind of trying to formulate this video, I think the best way to go about this in the future would be once they figure out their whole economy system and to promote obviously clarity between players and for players to be understanding of how the economy works. I think it'd be really valuable to have a conversion chart of how much is 1 diamond worth in Robux by Royale High, and then how much is 1 XP worth in diamonds. I think those conversions would be really helpful. And also just understanding, is 1 star equivalent to 1 XP, or is it different? Is a star equal to 1.25 XP, something like that? Because I'm just a little bit confused on why there's a discrepancy, because technically you're earning the right amount you're supposed to be earning. My diary said I was going to earn 25 XP for doing the run. And then when the UI shows me, it shows me I only earned 23, but actually in my XP bar, I earned the full amount. So I think that might be why some players think it was nerfed, and why, you know, myself included, was under the impression that it was nerfed, because it shows you that you're technically earning less XP, when in reality you're getting the full amount. So I don't know if this is a visual bug or if I'm misunderstanding how stars work and XP work. Please let me know in the comment section below. I'd like to learn. Obviously, I'm open to understanding things. But with that in mind, Thank you guys so much for watching. I did, of course, want to clarify. I did put a pinned comment in the video saying they said nothing changed, and I'm obviously not trying to spread misinformation. That's not my intention, but I do think it's important to be forthcoming with your opinions and your criticism. And I'm not gonna, obviously, I'm not naming any names, but I do feel like there is a large chunk of content creators in the Royale High space who are maybe a little bit apprehensive about talking about their thoughts or criticisms about the game. And I really do think that criticism is important, but it's really important when it's truthful. And obviously, I'm trying to be as truthful as I can based on the information. And so I thought it was my due diligence and my responsibility to share this conversation that I have with you guys. But I definitely do think there's an issue with some Royale High influencers heavily sugarcoating their commentary, or just kind of avoiding the harder topics, which I can understand, obviously, because nobody wants to get into beef with a massive game, and I obviously don't want that either. I don't want to have bad blood with anybody, but I think it's important that as a creator that you are sharing the thoughts and opinions of others and trying to uplift voices that maybe otherwise couldn't be heard. And I do think it's a little bit unfortunate that some creators who do have direct access to Royale High, I guess, through like the badge program, aren't speaking up about community concerns, so that this could have been clarified sooner, because obviously at the end of the day, I'm just some random YouTuber. Royale High doesn't care who I am. I'm not in their program. They don't really care, right? I'm just some random person. And so I do hope maybe in the future some Royale High badge holders will be maybe advocating for some clarity and can help, share information, because it's obviously not just the community manager's job. It's a whole Royale High thing where they all have to communicate together so that players can understand. There can be transparency, so there's no misunderstandings or miscommunications. And so I do just hope in the future that creators will feel comfortable enough to come forward and talk about things, because I see a lot of creators being like, wow, I get private messages from some Royale High creators. I'll be like, wow, like, Pommy, thanks for talking about this. I want to talk about it, but I didn't want to start anything, which my intention isn't to start anything, but I think it's really important that people can be honest about their criticism, especially if you're being respectful about it. So with that in mind, let me know your guys' thoughts in the comment section below. What do you think about this? What do you think about the numbers that I showed you? I'm thinking this is probably just a visual glitch, and that's what's led to all this miscommunication or misunderstandings, and hopefully this will all be resolved by February. But I don't know. We'll see. I'll keep an eye out on their community posts and see what's going on. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye!